But and this is the issue. This is why you have to do these things.
Now, Ron, this is interesting in that somebody had flicked at it earlier. There's a Southern paradox here in that people who are disproportionately Republican voting are disproportionately to benefit from an increase in the minimum wage. How does that work?
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing. In other words, the ideological skew of this issue is a little bit contrary to reality. In other words, it seems to me that the strongest single force focused in opposition to the minimum wage really tend to be sort of ideologues and maybe the lobbyists who are driving them. In that, when you think of it from the point of view of free market economics, it really doesn't make much sense for employers not to have to pay their own workers and to have the government pay the workers via something like the earned income tax credit. But obviously employers would prefer not to have to pay their own workers and have taxpayers pay their workers. And so, since employers have a lot of lobbyists and they fund a lot of think tanks and employ a lot of academic scholars who sort of are willing to focus on certain things and not other things, you really see a situation where, for example, most conservative intellectuals support direct fiscal transfer via the earned income tax credit, even though it's contrary to every principle of logical free market economics, while something else which really makes much more sense is simply to force workers to get money from the people who are getting the value of their labor.
And in the meantime, you say Southern whites provide the ballast of the party.
Exactly. And one of the key things is when you look at the politics of the issue again, if you're focused on a small rise in the minimum wage, the people who benefit tend to be Democrats and people who don't vote very much. And so it's going to be very hard to get, for example, the Republicans to support something like that. On the other hand, unfortunately, the data doesn't show Democratic versus Republican affiliation. But if you use, for example, Southern whites as a proxy for Republicans, because probably 90% of them vote Republican or more, it turns out that a rise in the minimum wage to $12 an hour would benefit 40% of all Southern whites. And that's the sort of thing, huge benefits, $5,000 a year per person. I think that would put a lot of pressure on the Republicans in Congress to support something like that.